Looking at a lifestyle. Number 3. It is difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. Yogi Berra. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. Gautama Buddha. In the second essay in this series, I offered the thought that we need to more competently develop the capacities of pre-adaptation, making adjustments to our habits and expectations in response to extremely likely future events, rather than only responding to the conditions that are immediately before us. But, of course, knowing how we will be living in the future can be a substantial difficulty. Cue Mr. Berra. The first steps are, of course, to accept that there can be clearly predictable futures and that responses in the present are needed to mitigate future dangers. Competent sources of knowledge and prediction need to be recognized and empowered. Then, as with any journey, we must have a clear idea of destination in order to decide a route. To begin, we must reorient ourselves with a diametrical turn of our most fundamental comprehension of our place in the world. Our dominating response to the most challenging issues today continues to be, what new things can we invent to defeat the unfortunate consequences of what we have already done? But the more important question must be, what does the biosphere require to retain and regain integrity and stability? The focus must be on the systems and processes that have evolved and maintained the biophysical structure of the Earth over billions of years, not the short-term needs of an economic or political calculation. To put it bluntly, if the human we is only able to focus on how to maintain our present ways of life and parochial thinking, then we will not survive. The conditions for complex life in the Earth's future could well be compromised by our failure for thousands, even millions of years. I recognize that this sounds overly dramatic, especially given the ease with which most people live in the developed world. But an increasing number of the most sober and serious thinkers in all relevant areas of study are either at this level of concern or rapidly moving in that direction. Here are 3 conditions of a long-term survivable future, a place we need to get to. We actually know them, even as we don't want to recognize them. Number 1, the human animal needs to use far less of the Earth's productivity, perhaps somewhere around 10% of the present use. Reducing human use to the one Earth measure of the ecological footprint tool will be woefully inadequate to allow the biosphere to reorganize into a healthy, self-maintaining system that isn't continuously challenged by human activity. Such a use rate would still be orders of magnitude greater than any other species has ever used in the history of life on the Earth. Number 2, a near net zero exchange relationship within human activity and ecosystems. Even with a large reduction in the use of the Earth's productivity, the way humans use what we take from the environment and what is returned to the environment must be in homeostatic ecological balance, as is and has been true for every other species of living things for billions of years. Number 3, an absolute accountability for actions in the environment. There must be feedback systems that make human economic, political, social structures and actions directly accountable to ecological conditions and events in the manner of all other organisms. The powerful human adaptations that have made it possible for many generations the defeating of ecological conditions require inhibition and regulation and must be made directly responsive to their effects on the living space. Our present human world seriously violates all of these conditions. We are not a functioning, integrated part of the biophysical systems that sustain and allow complex life on this planet. And it is increasingly clear that the universe will not be bent to puny human will. All of the narrowly focused economic, social, and political narratives and arguments that massively dominate the discussion of our human future are devoted to very short-term and ultimately distracting actions that ignore, deny, or are simply ignorant of these realities. What would the human world look like as people fulfilled these conditions? How would societies be structured? What political and economic systems would support these conditions? How would social, political, and economic systems be made directly responsive to environmental reality? How could social, political, and economic systems be made directly responsive to environmental conditions and changes, rather than the immediate self-serving perceptions of economic need and political advantage? These are vital questions to keep in mind, and while there are too many unknowns to answer them with any certainty, there are only a few ways that these conditions might be met. Only a few. That is the nature of biological fitness. Broadly and without detail, number one, with emphasis on social relations and values. We will live in a completely socialized economic political system, regulated and monitored in some effective way, with population numbers and consumption rates and patterns fully supportable by Earth's productive processes. Or two, with emphasis on power and force relations, a tiny minority of people will live with high rates of consumption and social political impunity, and the greatest number, greatly reduced from present numbers by starvation and disease, will exist at the pleasure of and in service to those tiny few as they attempt to avoid the consequences of the damage to the Earth's productive and stabilizing systems that continues to be done. I will propose one option that seems possible. Others should be proposed. It is often assumed that we can't get there from here, that some form of conflagration will be required before humanity will begin to make needed changes. But we can't know how we will respond as human-made realities ultimately collide with biophysical reality. We cannot know what form of situation will precede our potentially adapting to environmental reality. But informed thought and preparation now is essential. I will begin with the assumption of a population of about 4 billion people. A possible population number if real, somewhat humane reduction action is taken. Any population much less than that in the next 100 years could only be the result of catastrophic destruction of human societies and the Earth's biophysical systems, resulting in some unthinkable post-apocalyptic scenario completely beyond the scope of our potential influence. With still such a large population in continuity with the past, all the present issues of human nature and limitations, economic dependencies, political aspirations, nation-states, business interests, ethnic and racial confusions, and more could still be with us. We would not be living in wiki-ups or sod houses or in tribal communities plowing our fields with mules. It would not be a Luddite world. We will remain industrial, technological societies. The changes that our species must make will have to come from more fundamental aspects of ourselves. Otherwise, we will very rapidly repeat all of the behaviors of our past. 1. The most fundamental change would be to return the natural biophysical world to its role as the primary informing source for our actions. 2. An economic system designed to distribute compensations based on contribution to the material production and stability of society, rather than privately extracting and concentrating society's production of wealth. 3. New hierarchical systems of social valuing that depend on contributions to values of respect, honesty, social stability, and an informed population. 4. Our expectations for how we are to live a proper life need to come from our ecological, socially supportive relationships, replacing the anthropocentric stories of our ascendant powers that dominate the present time. It is essential to understand that any coherent system must have an external, independent, informing source. In the living world, that source is the evolutionary process, mediated through the designs surrounding and functioning through the RNA-DNA protein nexus. In the human world, as it's separated from the living world, our coherency was mediated by the stories that we told ourselves. These stories were, for hundreds of thousands of years, almost entirely based on our relationships with the immediate ecologies in which our communities lived, were therefore closely related to and responsive to biological processes. We adapted ways of restraining and regulating ourselves in stories, so that while they might seem fanciful to an observer, they were instructive and integrating of actions in the environment. But as increasingly our stories came from our imagination and were less and less restrained and regulated by the biophysical reality of an ecosystem, we lost our way as a functioning part of the Earth's systems. Our human world is largely disconnected from environmental feedback, disconnected from the experiences and information that may well be essential for the full development of our potential as human beings, and unquestionably essential for our species to comport our actions with environmental reality. In the present circumstance, we can only reattach to ecological feedback with a commitment to extensive measurement and evaluation of environmental data and enforcement of the implications. The only other way is to live in direct and immediate individual contact with the environment as small populations of essentially hunter-gatherers. Without immediate controlling feedback from the world's ecosystems, we would certainly use our powers of long-term avoidance of environmental consequences to quickly recreate all of the existing devastating ills, just as we have done in the past when faced with local failures of environmental services. We have clearly demonstrated in the last 10,000 years that Homo sapiens, we, cannot be trusted to act on our own self-referencing stories without environmental reality as a dominant, external, informing source. This leads me to a radical, frightening, and very unsatisfying conclusion. One of the options before us that should encourage us to find more humane ways forward is humans must find a way to create a computer-based system to which they give up major aspects of what we have come to see as our proper powers of control over ourselves and the world. Such an intelligent computer system would have to be untouchable by any human agency once set in place. As unsettling as this is, we have tried to use stories of moral authority. We have tried laws. We have tried regulation. And through it all, we have gone in 10,000 years, not a wink in evolutionary geological time, from starting fires with a spark from a struck flint to attempting to create and control the fusion of atoms like the interior of the sun. Gone from 1 million or so people to 8 billion plus and increasing. Gone from functioning, stable biophysical environmental systems to dangerous levels of polluting chemicals from pole to pole, and disrupted biophysical systems endangering the present assemblage of life. And we are not phased. We are continuing on with the same methods, growth and change, more energy production, more intervention. Since we will not, cannot, have never restrained ourselves with any devices of our own control, we must use what we do, invent, and implement to find a way that will be effective in restraining and regulating us. It seems that such an option is sitting there in front of us now: artificial intelligence, sophisticated computer and measurement systems that can be given actionable powers over economic and physical operators. To be clear, I hate the idea. But I have a correspondent who is thinking of an even more, to me, disturbing option: eugenics, using the full range of new genetic methods to change the very nature of the human mind and native behaviors that would allow for our survival as a new, less demanding and curious species, manufacturing in the manner of wolves turned into domestic dogs, but more quickly and dramatically. In my mind, there is a point in survival where it isn't survival at all. It is more than beginning to appear that we must consider the difference.